Hello and welcome to episode 3, season 12 of the Data Governance Podcast. And today we're going to dive into something maybe a little bit technical, but I truly believe it's some technical details that as data governance people we really need to understand. And I'm joined by Jamie Knowles from Studio, who is just great at explaining things. So I'm looking forward to quizzing him about all things JSON and why as a data governance person I need to care. So let's dive in and see what Jamie has to say. Today's episode is brought to you by Studio, the trusted name in data modelling. Just like building a home, managing data architecture is impossible without a blueprint. Studio is your guide to clarity, collaboration and compliance. Built for data professionals, Studio provides the essential tools to visualise, document and manage your enterprise data. Visit erstudio.com to learn more how Studio integrates all your source systems, ensures governance at every level, streamlines data sharing across your organisation, and even automatically converts your logical data models into physical models. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Data Governance Podcast. I'm really excited that Jamie Knowles is back for another episode. It's lovely to have you here, Jamie. Now, Jamie is the product director for Studio, and we've done some really brilliant episodes, even if I say so myself, where Jamie is just so happy to share his expertise on a range of topics. So I thought there was a lot of perhaps buzz around and people talking about JSON, and I'll be really honest, I wasn't really entirely sure, do I really need to care about JSON? And I thought, Jamie, you'd be the best person to discuss this with, because I did a video recently where I was answering a question about whether you had to be from a technical background to do data governance. And I actually think that perhaps being from a business background is better if you're doing data governance. But I do think we need to understand what's happening from a technical perspective. We need to have that overview. And I think it's, if I'll be really honest, JSON's something that I've heard of. I've seen things about it and it hasn't really impacted me. So I've just kind of put that in the worry about later pile. It feels like it's perhaps something that perhaps data governance people need to think about and understand a little bit more. So I'm going to put you on the spot and say, can you explain to me, what is JSON? Why do I need to know about it?
Beautiful. Yeah. I actually did a bit of research on this and I was really surprised how recent it is. So a little bit of history of JSON. So at a high level, what is it? It's the de facto way for systems to serialize data. Okay. Now, history. So before 1998, systems would exchange data through proprietary links over private phone lines using proprietary serialization formats. And it was really expensive and really complicated. And then around about 1998, the internet came in and everyone started deciding how can we exchange data over the internet using internet technologies like HTTP. So there was a new standards body that came in called the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, and they created a standard called XML, Extensible Markup Language, which was born from the printing industry alongside HTML. And it was great. It was an easy to use format, understandable by human beings. You could literally read a text file as XML and understand what the data was in there. It was marked up text. And also readable by machines. There were loads of components that you could get within your code to read and write XML, and that became the de facto message for exchanging data over the internet, sending messages. But it's very verbose and heavy. And as performance became more and more important, so around about the sort of early 2000s, so not too long after XML, a guy called Douglas Crockford noticed that the JavaScript language already had this lightweight syntax for objects and arrays and complex data structures. And so he pared that down to its essentials and created the original JavaScript object notation, JSON. And it was really efficient, able to support high performance exchanges of data, but still remained just about human readable. And like XML, it had a schema system, so you could validate messages to make sure they were well formed. And it really is now the de facto standard for exchanging and processing data in applications. Developers absolutely love it because it's human readable. There's loads of tools and third-party libraries in all languages to create and read it. And anyone producing native Java applications love it because it's all completely native. I think most APIs now, so system to system sort of integrations, use it as it's effective, simple, and powerful enough to describe complex data structures. So it really is the de facto way for serializing data. It's everywhere.
So that's really, I knew you'd be good at explaining it. So that's a useful understanding about, it's there and it's perhaps our way of transporting, moving our data. Why do we need to care as a data governance person?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, different types of data, different forms of data. So the main two forms of data that we're interested in is data at rest and then data in transit, data that is stored and data that's moving around. Now, data at rest, there's probably three forms of that. So we've got structured data that lives in traditional databases owned by applications and used by applications, or even in a data warehouse. I think most data catalogs, most data governance teams have got a good handle on their structured data. They've got a catalog of all of those databases and they know what's in them. Great, happy days. But we've got other forms as well. So next is unstructured data. And this is sort of documents, images, audio files, things that are really sort of hard for machines to sort of pick out what the content is. There's a lot of data in them. Okay, that's a very specialized area. The third thing is semi-structured data, and there's a lot of this. And I think by far most common is JSON. So data serialized as JSON, stored in JSON files, and then it's stored in lots of different places. So data lakes is a big one. We're probably pulling in data from all sorts of places. It might be web app analytics from your website. It might be data dumps from your systems, IoT, Internet of Things telemetry, electricity meter readings or smart devices all around the world sending out data that's getting stored as JSON files in your data lake, application logs, e-commerce transaction data, data feeds from partners like weather data. So we've got all this data sitting in your data lake. We might also have it in NoSQL databases like Mongo that store JSON natively. Now, remember, all your developers really love processing JSON data. They don't actually like having to write SQL queries talking to traditional databases. It's much easier for them to store and consume and read JSON data natively. So databases like MongoDB are getting really popular. Now, here comes the sort of insidious part of things. So our traditional databases that we all know and love and we've been governing quite happily with our very nicely structured data in them. Now, a lot of these databases allow you to type an individual column. So in your Excel spreadsheet for your table, I've got an individual column there. It's usually something like person's name. It's a simple string of data, very structured. But a lot of databases now allow you to type a column as JSON because the developers come along and say, for my application, I want to put some JSON data in here. Could you create me a couple of columns with JSON in there? Yeah, no problems at all. And off they go. And the database tools have got all sorts of features to allow you to read and write and process that JSON data. But for us as data governance people, that's a big worry. We've got a handle on those structured tables and columns, but then there's these embedded JSON strings, and all we've got is column called something JSON, but what's in there? Oh, scary. So that's where there's a real problem, and it's becoming sort of really, really common. And this is where you've got to rely on your sort of tools and your awareness of JSON data. So as a data governance person, let's talk to our sort of technical data stewards, talk to your data architects who have designed these things and say, hey, just while we're here, is there any embedded JSON data in this database? And the answer might come back as yes. And then we need to start employing sort of specialist tools to be able to go and read that embedded JSON data. So bit of a plug for Eon Studio here. We've just recently released some features that do exactly that. When you reverse engineer the sort of the first order tables and columns, we can go and have a little look and say, if I find any JSON data, do you want me to reverse engineer the schema of that? And we can send the whole lot to Calibra or Purview and start governing the whole lot, that hybrid sort of database.
Yeah.
So it's the sort of insidious nature of JSON.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, but also a little bit scary what you're
Yeah,
saying, because I think it's fair to say that for years I've cared about data as you were describing at rest and when it was in a database. And there'd be somewhere at my client that's an ETL team, and they're literally transferring the data from one source system and putting it in our data warehouse or our data lake. But they're not kind of losing it in JSON on the way. It was still there for me to do my lovely structured approach. So yeah, so now you're thinking this is quite scary, but it's also an opportunity because things could be going wrong because we're not governing the data that's in JSON files.
Exactly, exactly. So we've just got to keep an eye out. And a lot of your existing tools, when you're scanning them, the database might just say, yeah, there's all the tables and columns in this database. All looks great, no changes, no sensitive data there. But there could be hiding somewhere sneakily all this JSON data with all sorts of potentially sensitive or personal data in there.
You mentioned data in transit. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So data at rest, we've got a good handle on that. But a lot of data moves around. It moves around inside an application, between applications. It might move around between applications in the organization inside the firewall. It might even move out to external partners. And I guess this is a question to you. I mean, sort of how often does this come up in data governance programs that you've seen? Sort of being able to you've cataloged all the data at rest, but how often do organizations catalog those sort of lines of communication inside and outside of the organization?
Not really. I think data contracts and data for data sharing, maybe a little, but not much. Definitely not when it's all automated and or even within applications, I would say, from my experience.
Yeah, that's I find that sort of quite surprising. It's a sort of I think we were talking about this analogy the other day of sort of I've got the governance of my children at home and at the play school, the kindergarten, all organised, and my kids are well protected. But that journey from A to B, do we know about that? Is it that a sort of a fleet of Hell's Angels are going to be carrying my children from one place to another? I think it's worth understanding those journeys that our data makes, which journeys contains the sensitive information, and then what protections have we got on those journeys. So I think that's definitely something to have in the data catalog.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that analogy, actually. You could have done all your research, and I'm only going to send my children to this daycare or whatever because they're governed and obviously we make sure they're safe at home, but you just literally hand them over to a Hell's Angels to drop them off at kindergarten for you. I mean, but it's a brilliant way of thinking about it and making people realize that that's perhaps what we're doing with our data. We're governing it in system A, we're governing it in system B, but we don't really care what's happening to it as it moves from one to the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it should be the same sort of process of governing our data at rest. We're going to catalog those data movements, understand what data assets are flowing within them. And this again is where JSON comes in. Most of the time, it'll be some sort of JSON file that flows through an API or through some other mechanism, streaming service or whatever. So we can start to catalog, reverse engineer, and understand those JSON structures just like any other data asset. And again, your data architects can help.
So it feels like we need to expand our scope, and we've also got to work out how are we going to do this. So I'm going to put you on the spot because obviously that's why you're here to give me advice. But where do we start as a data governance person? Do I just go up to my developers and say, give me access to your JSON files? How do we start doing data governance over JSON files?
Yeah, well, I guess there's two roles that are going to help you. You've got your technical data stewards, who are the people that should understand the technology, and they've got tools in Calibra, Purview, etc., to help with that. You've also got your data architects These are the people that designed it. So as I said, they use tools like ER Studio, which have features in there to help you document and read that. Chances are that the data architect has designed that database from the get-go to include JSON structures. They already have designed the schemas of those JSON files that's going into those databases. So they've probably got all that knowledge. They've probably got it all documented in their tool, their data architecture tool, which might connect with your data catalog. So go and have a chat with your data architects and just confirm that they're on top of it and provide you with good documentation of all of that.
So it sounds like if for anybody listening, if they haven't listened to our earlier podcast episodes, it's probably a good one to go back to, because I think even particularly the very first one we did together, we were kind of really exploring how closely data architects and data governance people need to work together. And this feels like just yet another reason why they shouldn't just be somebody you talk to occasionally. This should be a team that you're really closely aligned with. So new JSON files are being designed and that you're getting there at the get-go.
Exactly. Simple as that.
Excellent. So it's like most things, I say it so many times, data governance isn't done in isolation. It's done with everybody. And, in this instance, it sounds like, yet again, now data architects are going to be our new best friends.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a collaboration. We've all got the same objectives. We're all in it together. Let's work as a team.
Wow, Jamie certainly gave us a lot to think about there, didn't he? And I wasn't joking when I said at the end, I really am going to start talking to some of my clients about are they using JSON files in their databases and in their data in transit, and how can we as the data governance team start bringing that under governance? So lots to think about there. If you haven't heard the other episodes where Jamie joined us, I'd encourage you to go back and explore them. He really is so great at explaining things. There are 4 episodes in which he appears on, all around the theme of data products in season 10. But the episode I particularly was talking about, where we talked about the very close relationship that data architects and data governance should have, was episode 12 of season 9. And if you haven't listened to that one, I really would encourage you to go and listen to that. It's a really useful episode. So that's it for this week. I hope you will join me back here next week, where I am going to be joined by 2 of my very good data friends, Alex Lee and Rav Ubi Adams. And we're going to be talking about all things data governance, but in particular looking at data governance in higher education. If you don't work in higher education, please do join us, because there's a lot of commonality across sectors. And I just know that Rav and Alex will be sharing some great gems of wisdom. So I hope you would join us then.